Hello there. Hello, my name's Gladys Famoriyo, and welcome to Maximizing Challenging Times. As you know, I've been doing a series over the last few weeks to support us in terms of making the best out of these peculiar times that we're facing at the moment. So all the different things that we're going through, through the COVID virus, the lockdown, and a whole raft of other things that we're having to deal with in this time. And so I'm put together a series of talks. You can check my Facebook. Facebook, Gladys Famoriyo. You'll find some more information on all the other ones that I've done in the past. Now, today is special because we are going to be looking at Mental Health Week. That's where we're at this week. And it's a special one because I've titled today's session Maximizing Our Downtimes. Now, as we all know, we're all in a situation where we're all in a downtime. We're either furloughed at work or forced to stay at home because of the current climate that we're currently facing. And so, therefore, we are kind of having to make the best out of the situation that we're facing. And I just really wanted to spend some time talking about how we can actually maximize our downtime. With a perspective around mental health and emotional health. Now, I'm not talking about doing the garden, even though all of that contributes towards living how can I put it, living abundant lives. It helps with our well-being. But what I want to focus on is really what's going on here and what's going on really here on the inside of you. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. And I really do hope that some of the principles I'll be sharing with you will bless you. As you all know, I'm going to be sharing from the book Bounce Back, which is How to Survive, Thrive and Maximize Challenging Situations. I wrote that book for two reasons, really. Number one, as a result of dealing with some of my own personal issues that I've had to face over the years and how I had to try and flip that adversity on its head. You'll probably hear me say that time and time again, because I really do believe that regardless of what we face in life, we have the capacity through God to flip that situation on its head, make something good come out of it, and more importantly, positively grow as a result of that situation. Now, I am convinced that that is the case. And so what we're going to be talking about here today is really about how we can maximize that time. Now, many years ago, I read a book called The Joys of Burnout. Now, some people might think, oh, what could be good out of burning out? And, how could burning out be a good thing? But you know what? I read that book, and you might want to Google it and find it, but it was a really powerful book. And the whole ethos around the book was talking about how you could get something positive out of even a dark situation that seems like burnout. Now, if you've ever been through burnout before, all energy levels of, this is not even just stress anymore. Energy levels gone out the window. You're not able to work. It's more than likely you're off work. You can't function in the way that you used to, and there's just motivation's just gone down the toilet. Nothing's going on. And I found myself in that particular situation. In fact, I found myself in that situation a few times, and thankfully, I've gradually learned the lessons. I want to share with you some principles that I've gleaned from just having moments where you're thinking, what's going on? How can this be? What's going on? When you're either burnt out, stressed out, or whether you're going through a situation that we're currently going through where we are, at home as a result of COVID-19. But as I say, I learnt from that particular book and some of my own experiences that there is power when you are forced to take stock and slow down. And I think if there's one thing that this season is helping us doing is literally slowing down. Now, I do know some of us, including myself, who thought, okay, I'll do the painting, I'll do this, I'll do that. And, we've got like a mile list, and I've dealt with that. I think in the second or third episode where I talked about taking the pressure off yourself, because sometimes we put so much ridiculous pressure, and I'm guilty. We put so much pressure on ourselves to try and do certain things, and it's like, take the pressure off, stop creating a rod for your own back, so I just want us to, use part of this time when we're at home to just think about some of the internal things that might be going on here, so that we can promote wellness, so that we can maintain our wellness and come out on the other side well, as opposed to coming into that whole lockdown completely stressed and then leaving stressed to go back into the workforce. Now that would kind of like be a travesty. I don't know about you, but that would be a real travesty. So it's really looking at what we can do to get ourselves to start thinking internally and reflecting. So as I said, today is really about how we can maximize the down times. And I really do believe that there is always a silver lining. There's always a silver cloud in every situation that we find ourselves in. But before we do that, I just wanted to start off with one of my favorite scriptures around resting. Now, I've done Matthew 11:29 to 30 before. So this time I'm going to be doing Isaiah 30 and verses 15 to just verses 15 actually. I love I've got the Amplified version open, but I want to quickly read the New Living Translation that says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says, the Holy One of Israel says, only in returning to me and resting will you be saved. In quietness and in confidence is your strength." Now that's phenomenal. Let me read that again, especially the crucial bits. "Only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength." Now there is something, if you notice, there's some three powerful words that it mentioned: resting, to resting, quietness, and confidence. And when we do all of those, we get saved and we get strength. Now, we all know that we need strength just to navigate this life. When the doors open again and we go back out there, goes back on those treadmills of life, we're going to need strength. And I really want all of us to be able to come out of this situation stronger, and not just physically stronger. I mean, we're all doing our workouts at home, and I've joined the club too, doing our workouts at home and doing all this kind of lovely stuff that we're doing. But there is also around internal strength, as well as mental health, as well as our emotional health as well, making sure that we don't leave those out of the situation while we are doing that. So what can we start to do when it comes to maximizing our down time? Now I want to use a quick analogy here, and I'm sure we've all been in this situation before. Sometimes when you go to the doctor's surgery and we're all in this big waiting room and we're all kind of like waiting. Okay, and then you'll find that some people, they're just sitting there looking like, just looking into the air. And, it could be just because of the current situation they're facing. Maybe they're unwell, whatever, but they're just kind of looking straight like, whatever. Some people on their phones, texting, whatever. Some people are playing games, some people are playing music, some people are using the time to catch up with their reading, some people are reading their Bible. All sorts of things are going on in there. Now, if you can imagine, that's where like a lot of us are at today. And, I think one of the key things that I've personally always shared with, people who are either my clients or the people I mentor is always maximizing every moment. So I'm probably one of those people that if you were to find me in a doctor's surgery, I will be catching up with my reading or my Bible reading or something, as opposed to just flicking aimlessly through social media or playing Crush Candy. And by the way, I'm not knocking all those things. They're fine, and they have their place, because you know what, to somebody who's just going on social media, maybe that's just their time that they actually have and don't have anything. So I'm not knocking any of that, but I'm also saying that we are in a downtime right now, whether we like it or not, and we can maximize it or we can throw it away. And I think we can dare say that in our lifetime, maybe I'm pushing that a little bit, but in our lifetime, the chances are that we may never, ever have another situation like this. Now, how mind-boggling is that? I was going to say how cool. I won't say cool, but how mind-boggling is that? Because you may never get this time again. You may never get this time again. And I'm not talking about, when we say, oh, the new year and then another year goes and another year. I'm not talking about that. This is the first time ever that we would have the opportunity to be at home, work from home, for those of us who are in privilege, I say privilege, but opportunity, should I say, to do that, as well as the opportunity to just catch up with ourselves. As I said, if you've ever read, Overcoming Emotional Baggage, in fact, that's what started me on this journey. I was this 20-year-old something on a treadmill, running for, just on the rat race, day in, day out, day in, day out. And it had its toll. Yes, you can say, well, it's great, that we're achieving great things. But the question is at what cost? Because it did cost me. I talked about that whole journey starting from, the book Overcoming Emotional Baggage, because I realized in my running constantly like a hamster, going round and round and round on this treadmill, I was accumulating issues. I wasn't dealing with issues. I lost my sense of self-awareness. I wasn't, just so many things going on. And that's basically where, the series of books that came as a result of it, the Healing Discouraged Heart, because I discovered, oh my God, I have issues with disappointment and discouragement, and so on and so forth. When you look at the book, Quit Hiding, Start Living, then I discovered, oops, there's some relationship issues that need to be dealt with as well. And unforgiveness and resentment and all this stuff. And it's just endless. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is our downtime to have the opportunity to deal with some of these things. And the onus is on you. Are you going to be one of those who, just sits there and flits it away, just box it after box it, binging or whatever it is? And as I said, there is a time and place for all those things. But what about what's going on here and what's going on here? That's the key thing you need to keep in mind. What is going on here and what is going on here? And when I say here, I'm talking about your mind. And when I talk about here, I'm talking about your heart. Okay, so what can we start to do? So let's start this whole journey. Now, I always talk about, I've mentioned earlier on about me being on full throttle. And, when I say full throttle, people struggle to keep up with me. So even if you walk with me, you will notice I'm probably doing double or treble the pace that you're going, because I'm just and so when those times come for for what I call enforced rest. Now this is one of those seasons, a season of enforced rest, or either through being unwell, having a cold or the flu or whatever it is. It kind of forces you to to take a back step. I'm not saying that you need to be ill before you start to do that, but it's again, remember I talk about silver lining in every situation. There is always a blessing, and for me personally, it's in those times where I've had the greatest clarity, where I've had the opportunity to just reflect and regroup and just understand what's really going on internally. So let's start this journey here so that we can start to maximize our downtime, and more importantly, really reflecting on what's currently going on internally, so that we can come out of this situation healthier, stronger, and more powerful. So what can you do to maximize this time? Now, as I said, it's not necessarily just binge watching TV or social media, but I am an advocate for us going out there, connecting with friends, family, exercising, eating right, sleeping right, doing all those kind of things that we don't have to, we weren't able to do before. So all of that still stays in place. But I have some 4 nuggets for you to just think about while you're on this downtime. The first thing is about embracing the season. Now, I remember several years ago, I remember telling a friend of mine how I was struggling, and I was telling her how I was feeling out of sorts and talking about a whole raft of other things that was going on in my life. And I think at the time, I was still suffering from the after effects of losing my dad, who suddenly passed away. And, having not dealt with any form of major loss in that kind of regards, I just didn't know what to do. And my strategy was literally to continue working, to just keep going, just kept going until one day I just kind of opened up to a friend and I said, I'm feeling a bit, and one of the things she actually said to me that, you do realize that you haven't fully embraced the season that you're in. And I'm like, I walked away from that conversation and I thought, well, what does that mean? And she was basically, when I kind of unpacked it, what she was basically saying is you need to accept where you are today and fully acknowledge where you are today and then take the corresponding action for where you are today. So in short, prior to me losing dad, I was just perhaps skipping along on my journey, just carry on, everything's a-okay, and that's cool. That's what we should be doing, enjoying our life abundantly in God. However, I came across this obstacle. In fact, what some of you may have heard me say time and time again through these sessions, the unscripted life moments. Like the time when my sister had a really nasty accident, or even 2 years ago where the same said sister passed away. Yeah, right. Okay, I did say I've had my own unscripted moments. And so, all these things that life throws in our way, if we don't embrace the season and acknowledge that, actually things have changed a little bit. Yesterday I was, in a different space, but today I've had loss, grief, bad news, ill health. Not me, I'm just saying, I'm using it as an example. I've had all these kind of things, and we need to actually accept that, something has changed here and I need to adapt to that season. What you don't want to do is what I did is when I can't remember how many years now that dad's passed away, where I literally just carried on. I mean, at the time I was a traveling consultant, traveling around the world, doing a lot of leadership development training, and, as a consultant, here, there, and everywhere. And you know what? He passed away in April. August, I was still full throttle, didn't take no time off whatsoever, even, I just about took the funeral off. And then I found myself one day at the back of a session. I was working with the senior management team, and thankfully there were two of us working on that day. One was presenting in the front, and I was at the back of the room, and I found myself crying. And I thought, what's going on here? Miss Professional Woman, you've got a senior management team in front of you. What are you doing? And I was crying. And then again, having that conversation with my friend, it's like, well, you haven't actually accepted that you're in a different season. Something has changed. This is a completely different season. You've got to identify with that, accept it, and take the corresponding action. Needless to say, shortly after that, I did take some time off work just to catch up with myself and deal with the whole aspect of grief. And in dealing with that, that's when, to be honest, the book Healing a Discouraged Heart came about, because I really didn't realize that I had issues with discouragement, with death. I didn't realize I had issues with God. I had so much. But that downtime became a productive time for me, because even though there was a bit of uncomfortable, I had to deal with some certain things, but I came out of that stronger, but not just stronger for me. Through the grace of God, I was able to then flip that adversity on its head and be a blessing to somebody. In fact, I might have said this before, but one of my greatest joys with the book Healing a Discouraged Heart, and I'm trying to find it if I have it here right next to me, but one of the joys for me was when somebody sent me an email, anonymous email, to say, you know what, I just want to let you know that since reading that book, there's been fewer tears. And that really touched my heart, because I knew that even when I was writing that book, the tears of losing dad was literally, when I'm on the computer or whatever, it was so raw. And so what I'm trying to say here is okay, you know what? The first thing is really embracing the season that you find yourself. That's one of the key things in terms of maximizing the downtime. Accept where you find yourself. So if you're burnt out, if you're discouraged, if you're stressed out, if you're experiencing mental fatigue, if you're whatever stage you find yourself today, accept where you're at and take the necessary steps to overcome that. Now, for you, it might be speaking to somebody like I did with my friend. It might be speaking to a counselor, and there is no crime with that, getting professional help. It might be speaking to somebody else, maybe in your network, a pastor, somebody, a chaplain, whoever. A friend, somebody who can be there for you, who can be a support mechanism and also encourage you, give you support that you need at the time. But it's about doing something about it. So the first principle really is, or should I call it rule, is embracing the season of the time that you're facing and giving yourself the permission to stop. Think about this. This is an irony I find really strange in life, right? If we break our legs, guess what? We leg it to, not leg it, you won't be able to run. Sorry, pardon the pun, okay? But if you break your leg, right, you will go to hospital, isn't it? If you cut yourself, if you're cooking, you go and get plaster, you might treat it with antiseptic, but you do something. If you scold yourself, you put your hands, you do all the necessary treatments, that you need to do. But what happens when life throws us a curveball? What is it that we do? Now, some people might say, I just, carry on, I press on. Now, you know what? You know me, I'm a proponent for pressing on. Paul talks about forgetting the past and just pressing on. And it's like, if you got like your laser like focus and you just keep going regardless of what you're facing. Paul is a classic example of that in the Bible, whereby it's about pressing on and pressing on. But there is also a time I've learned, especially studying the life of Jesus Christ. I understand there is a key principle of, there's a time to press on, do some work. But there was a time also when he said to his disciples, you know what, guys? We've been working really hard. Let's take some chill out time. Now, I'm sure he didn't say it like that, but you get the drift, right? He said, we need some chill out time. And he did do that. He took him aside, and you see him sometimes he just disappears from the crowd. Sometimes he might just go up a mountain by himself. Now, he didn't always say that he went up to pray, but he just says he went away, secluded. And, these are some of the things that, I've kind of thought, well, actually, there might be some logic in what he was doing. And I've started to incorporate some of those things in my life. And perhaps you can do the same as well. Think about what strategies that you can put in place to just take yourself out of this full throttle of just constantly going on the treadmills of life, and giving yourself the space to embrace the season that you are in. So that's the first one that I want you to think about. That's the first rule, embracing the season, and of course taking the corresponding action towards that. Now, the next one is just a principle that I always share with people that says all situations are not equal. Okay, so what do I mean by that? It's basically you understanding that not every situation is the same. And therefore, the corresponding action you take obviously can't be the same. Now, let me give you an example. Okay, so every so often, and I'm sure you get this, you might get a headache. Okay, so if you get a headache, what are some of the things that you might do? Well, you might decide you're going to you might take a paracetamol. In terms of me, anytime I get a headache, I know it's either I'm dehydrated, or I haven't eaten, or I haven't slept enough. For me, those are generally the three kind of things that goes for me. So for me, I might, drink some more. I might have something to eat. So I'll check, have I eaten or not? And number three, I might just go and lie down anyway. In fact, I might just do all the above and just check myself out. And I might take the paracetamol as well. However, if somebody has what I call maybe a suspected heart attack or a suspected stroke, will we use the same methods that we use for the headache? Absolutely not. Why? Because one is not so critical, but the other is potentially life-threatening. And therefore, we have to treat them differently. And what I've found both in my life, and I'll always use myself as an example, as well as some of the people that I was working with, some of the people I've come across, is the fact that we treat all those situations the same. The headaches and the strokes or the heart attacks, or all those kind of things. But that's it. It just can't work, because a paracetamol is not necessarily going to help you when it comes to a stroke or a heart attack or anything like that. And I'm using those, and I'm not wishing that on anybody, but I'm using it as an analogy that when it comes to certain situations, you need different actions. So, for example, if it was a case whereby, let me try and think of a scenario here now. Okay, let me use my dad's example, as I said earlier on. The situation with the grief, where I found myself at the back of this room doing a major event with some senior management team, and then crying my eyes out. It's like so to the world, it's like so not so unprofessional, so not the thing to do. And it's like, because I realized that when I took my foot off the treadmill, I realized that actually the issue was I hadn't dealt with the grief, the loss of losing dad. So the way I treat that is not the way I will treat, say, for example, when somebody says something bad to me. Okay, let me use a classic example. Many years ago, many years ago, remember, this is the era when I wrote the book Overcoming an Emotional Baggage, right? One of my ways of dealing with feeling inner unrest, not, self-esteem kind of like a bit low, confidence may have gone out the window for the day, and it's like, ugh, and then somebody just comes in and says something like, oh, you're looking well. Now, I know what they mean when they say I'm looking well, because I used to be a plus size lady. I was plus size and, quite confident and happy about it. But when people said things like that, it really had a major impact on me, and I kept replaying that. That narrative will keep going around in my head. That hurt story will keep going around. This person said this. Now I'm using it as an example now. That situation whereby somebody said something to me, compared to the loss of a loved one or something like that, it's obviously, they're not really on the same level. They both have heart issues that need to be dealt with. So, yes, with that particular situation of that person, I might just need to, to speak to them, or just forgive them, or speak to somebody who can help me deal with that situation. But with the dad situation, I might need a counselor. I might need to go and speak to my pastor. I might need to, in fact, I will definitely need to take some compassionate leave off to just try and deal with that whole process. Because not only do you need to deal with the process, you need to then plan the funeral. And I have to admit that even when I was planning this funeral, I was so completely removed from the whole situation that I was actually designing the flyer for the program, the flyers and the program and whatnot, with the graphics designer. And in my head, it was for some obscure person. It wasn't even for dad. That's how far removed I was. And that's why I said to you, the first principle was embracing the season, because I hadn't done that yet. So going back to this situation, the second principle about all situations not being equal, we have to understand that depending on what we're facing, we are going to need to take the appropriate action. Now, looking back with that situation, more than likely I'll have gone to speak to a friend of mine who's a counselor. More than likely I'll have taken time off. More than likely I'll have done so many other things. I mean, they do say hindsight's 2020, right? And I thank God that I learned so much from that experience, because, when my younger sister, Debbie, when she passed away 2 years ago, but it'll be 2 years in August, completely different outlook, completely different attitude. I dealt with my issue around death and people passing away, because I didn't realize that was an issue. I dealt with my issues with God and, like, why do you have to take people away? I dealt with, the unforgiveness. I remember having some issues, unresolved issues with my dad. And, through God's grace and God's grace alone, by the time it came to Debbie's time, it was completely different, a different atmosphere, a different outlook. And why? Because I'd taken the time out to start that process of dealing with the issues, the mind issues and the heart issues, in the downtime. And you know what? It's the downtime that prepares you for the uptime. I like that. That's a new ring. I've got to keep that one. Okay. The downtime prepares you for the uptime. So when that situation happened again, and I'm not saying that, I could smile and talk about Dad and Debbie right now, because it's been God and God alone that got me through that. But I realized there was power in the downtime. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons why I wrote the book Bounce Back. And it's just, I wrote it for me, really, to be honest. Bounce back, how to survive, thrive, and yeah, so there we go. Okay, I wrote it for me because I realized there is power in the downtime. I realize there's power even sometimes when you're unwell or when you are not in a place where you want to be. There is such power in being able to come back stronger, but you have to take the right steps. No one's going to take those steps for you. You're going to have to try and grow out of that situation by yourself. Now, I'm not saying you do it by yourself, but there has to be a inner determination to say, you know what, this thing ain't going to beat me. Just like I said, when Debbie happened, I'm like, no, it's not going to beat me the way it did last time. I am going to come out of this stronger. And I'll be open and honest to say, when I got the news of my sister passing away, the first thing I did, the first thing I did, I dropped on my knees and I said to Father, I said, God, I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what's going on, but I know that power belongs to God. And I know that you still rule and reign on the throne of grace. And so I honor you. I thank you, not for the not for the news, but I'm recognizing you for who you are in this situation. Now give me the strength to deal with this. Now, of course, I got off on my knees and then it realized, like, what did I just hear? Debbie passed away? How? And I had to go through that whole process. By the way, I'm not saying that because, just because, you prepare yourself and you maximize your downtime, it doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt. You are going to get hurt. But you know what? The bouncing back, and that's why that title was so crucial. The bouncing back is the crucial thing, and it all hinges on what you do in the downtime. Remember I said earlier on, what you do in the downtime has an impact on what happens to you in the uptime. It keeps you going. And so when you are looking at the situations that you're facing, remember the first principle was embracing the season that you're in. The second one was, it's about understanding that not every life situation is the same. The way you will treat a headache is not the way you treat a stroke. That's is as graphic as I can put it. And it's for you to understand where you fit in between, I'm using that as an example, and I'm not, I can't think of any other explanation at the moment, but some of us might be at this this headache bit, and some of us might be at this more critical situation. To be honest, a lot of us, now we're talking about mental health, a lot of us are with somewhere between this continuum. We're floating on a day-to-day basis. You might be on this paracetamol kind of level whereby, okay, you know what, prayer, the word, speaking to somebody would deal with it. Boom, situation's gone. But on this other part, so for example, I use maybe the loss of a partner, loss of a family member, a loved one. You need a bit more than the paracetamol. So understanding the situation you're in and making sure you take the right action. Number 3, treat your situation accordingly. Now, this follows on from the previous one about treating your situation accordingly and understanding all that needs to take place in that season. So I'm going to use myself as an example again. I remember many years ago, I had a bunion taken off. Now, that time, I mean, it was all my fault, bad shoes in my teens, in my younger days, going out wearing high heels and all that kind of stuff. Trust me, it's not good for you. Anyway, but I had a bunion taken off many years ago. And thankfully, the way things worked at that time, you go in as a day patient, you have the surgery. They don't need to knock you out, so there's no general anesthetic, just local. They do what they need to do, and they give you a set of instructions. Don't wear shoes, don't do this, don't do that. Basically rest for that period, okay? And then there was another time where I needed my wisdom teeth taken out. Now, I know that they may have changed their approach to somewhat, because I hear people say they have it done in their dentist. I'm like, what? How? Yeah, anyway, I had 4 impacted wisdom teeth. They were just causing chaos many years ago. And so what did they do? So they took me into hospital, and it was late afternoon, knocked me out, took them out, and then I came around. Now, 2 different kind of situations. Now, with the wisdom teeth, obviously, I couldn't eat, which is good in a way because I lost a shed load of weight. Whoop, whoop. Okay, talk about free dieting. Okay, lost weight. Okay, but couldn't eat. Obviously, the discomfort and whatnot, But then also had a set of instructions. Remember, key thing, both of them, I had sets of instructions that I needed to follow through those situations. The bunion had its own set of instructions that don't even try and wear shoes. How much, in fact, sit your derriere behind and just put your feet up. That's the instructions I got. With the other one, drink liquids for the next few days, make sure, until they heal, then come back in, da da da. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because each of those situations had different instructions that I had to follow to make sure that the healing process went well. Now, if I had decided to just say, okay, forget what the doctors say, especially when I had the teeth done, and I was just going to, okay, I was going to come home and have, chicken and rice, jollof rice or something like that, and I was going to be crunching on some bones, that I'm asking for trouble, because that is going to cause serious pain if it's not going to undo some of the good work that they've done in my mouth. Same kind of thing with the bunions. Instructions were sit down, put your feet up, give it a good to 6 to 8 weeks, and rest. Now, I didn't quite like that one because it meant somebody who was quite active became inactive and then gained some weight because I couldn't. They said don't walk around, just minimal walking and then do your exercises. Now, why am I going to those great lengths to tell you those stories? In fact, I'm telling you all my stories today. But anyway, the reason why I'm saying that is again, every situation requires a set of instructions that you're going to need to follow. Now, this is your downtime, and you might have a bunion situation in your life, or you might have, when I say, but I'm not talking about a real, we're talking emotionally, mentally. You might have situations going on in your life. What is the script or instructions that you are following for this season of your life? Now you might say, oh, okay, you need specific steps, instructions. What is it that you're going to do to help you get through the situation? Now I've got a couple of things in the book, Bounce Back, on page 49, I think it is. Actually, no, before we do that, on page, there was one of the things I had the 5 R's that I recommended that people should follow. And that's just in case you haven't had the book, it's on page 43. Okay, so it talks about some of the things that I talk about, that one of the things that this season affords us to be able to do is what I call the 5 R's. Now, you might have heard of it in one way or the other, but let me share with you the 5 R's. Now, this is an approach that I actually put in place for myself. So the first R is rest. Now, remember, you heard me say that scripture earlier on, what was it again? Isaiah 30, verse 15. It talked about, let me find out again, the New Living Translation says, this is what the Sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel says, only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and in confidence is your strength. So I'll repeat that again. So only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength. So that's Isaiah 30, verse 15, New Living Translation. So here are my instructions for you. So just in case you're thinking, okay, so what can I do for this period? Okay, what you can do is this, the 5 R's. Okay, the first one is rest. Okay, rest is not just a case of just sitting down and doing nothing, but it could be. And rest is not just a case of throwing yourself in bed, because we all know between the TV, phone, or even just our mind replaying. Remember I talked about that lady who said those horrible things to me, okay? That replaying. So you're not really at rest at that point, but you really want real rest, okay? And then in the other R you can do, so that's number 1, rest. Then the second one is recovering. So again, maximizing your downtime is around that recovery process. Number 3, replenish. So for example, remember we talked about, I said earlier on about the issue of being burnt out. Now, fantastic opportunity to then replenish yourself physically, spiritually, mentally, and every way you can actually think of. So that's our number 3. So we've had rest, recover, replenish. The next one is reflect. Now, there was a quote that I found and I thought, oh, that's a really good quote, if I may say so myself. Okay, it's around that whole notion of self-awareness. And I've said here on page 49, it says, it's amazing that through the physical body, sorry, let me start again. It's amazing that though the physical body may be down, rendering us immobile or even inactive, it becomes an excellent opportunity for the human spirit and soul to be revived and to be restored, as well as experience growth. Now that's amazing. And I found that it's in my quiet times, it's in the times when I'm just taking myself out of the loop, that I have experienced complete and utter restoration just by taking some time out to reflect and to maximize my downtime, basically. So we've had the 5 R's. So we've done rest, recovery, replenishment, and reflection. It's about understanding where you're at and making the best of that situation. And also, I talked about reflection, and then the last one is regrouping. So regrouping is about, okay, looking at a situation that's not quite what we want it to be and taking action to move forward from that. So just another thing about reflection, just something I found earlier on as well. I'm just reading again, page 50 here. It says, I hold the view that whilst knowledge is power, self-awareness is a much needed skill to aid us in making smarter choices and better decisions for our lives. So self-awareness is powerful. And I always use the analogy of sometimes that when back in the day when I was so busy, I'll maybe if I'm in the office or preparing for a conference or whatever, I'm packing boxes, whatever it is I'm doing, sometimes I get a paper cut. I don't know if you ever get that, okay? Get a paper cut. And I don't actually realize the paper cut is there until it starts bleeding. Now, sometimes that's what happens on the inside of us. Sometimes we don't realize that we've had emotional and mental cuts until it starts to bleed. Now, in your world, bleeding could mean, oops, hopefully you can still see me. Hopefully you can still see me. My video screen has gone blank. Oh. I'm not sure if I could still be seen.